My fiancé's family called me a broke nobody and made her leave me. They thought I'd disappear quietly, but what I did next shattered their perfect reputation. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. When Chloe walked out of our apartment, she didn't slam the door. She didn't even look back. That hurt worse than yelling would have. I sat on the floor with Hunter's head on my lap, staring at the half-empty closet. Her side was bare except for a wire hanger and a lonely perfume bottle she must have forgotten. The silence in that room was so heavy it felt like it had weight. I'd seen the way her parents looked at me for months. Edward with that cold assessing gaze like I was a used car he wouldn't buy. Lauren always smiling too wide, then talking over me as if I wasn't there. And Vanessa, she'd scroll through her phone at dinner and snicker whenever I tried to join in. Chloe had started repeating their words. Maybe the shop is on a long-term plan, she'd said one night. The same night I'd just landed a contract with 3 more delivery vans. I thought she was stressed about the wedding. I thought love could drown out that poison. When she left, she mumbled something about needing space and Dad's right. Then the front door clicked, and just like that, my life was split into before and after. I didn't call her, didn't beg, didn't drive over to the Hawthorne house to plead my case like they expected. Instead, I sat there listening to the tick of the kitchen clock and the soft whine from Hunter, thinking, they think I'll stay silent, they think I'll just disappear. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up the joint account I'd funded for the wedding. Half my money was gone, not spent, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Something cold crawled down my spine. I didn't know it yet, but that was the first crack in their perfect picture. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with Hunter pressed against my leg. The apartment felt wrong without her shoes by the door. I made coffee, but it tasted like nothing. I stared at the bank app again. The missing money wasn't a mistake, someone had taken it. I clicked the transaction to lead to a Hawthorne-linked trust account. I laughed out loud, a sharp, bitter sound. They didn't even try to hide it. At 10 a.m., Edward Hawthorne called me. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. Justin, he said smoothly. I hope you understand that Chloe needs stability. She's with us now. We'll handle the accounts, my money. The cash I'd saved for the wedding, the honeymoon, the first house deposit. I didn't authorize that transfer, I said. My voice sounded calm, but my hand was shaking. Consider it a contribution, he said, like I was some kid paying rent to live in his world. Chloe will be well taken care of, but if you care about her, don't make this messy. Click, he hung up before I could answer. I sat there frozen, the phone warm against my ear. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a quiet erasure. That night, I drove past the Hawthorne estate. Chloe's car was in the driveway, lights glowing from the upstairs suite. No one answered my texts. Hunter whined softly in the passenger seat. For the first time, the thought hit me like a brick. They don't just want me gone, they want me invisible. And if I stayed quiet, they'd win. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the apartment felt louder without Chloe's breathing next to me. Hunter's ears kept twitching, picking up my tension. At 2 a.m., I sat at my workbench in the garage, staring at the small safe where I kept all my business files. Invoices, receipts, contracts, and in the top drawer my old dash cam. I hadn't used it in years, but suddenly, I remembered leaving it in the car the night I drove Chloe to her parents' house for dinner, the night she told me maybe we should slow down. That dinner where Vanessa laughed under her breath while Edward asked me about career longevity like I was a temp worker. I dug the dash cam out, hands shaking. The memory card was still inside. Plugging it into my laptop, I scrolled through clips of late-night drives and shop errands until one file caught my eye, date stamped the night of that dinner. I clicked it. The video was boring at first, just me parking in their driveway. Then, as I stepped out and went to grab flowers from the back seat, voices drifted into the car. Mick. He'll never make enough. Edward's voice. He's harmless, Lauren replied. Then make her see it, he said flatly. Before she ruins her life. I froze. It wasn't a confession of theft, but it was proof of intent, proof they'd been planning this long before Chloe left. Hunter nudged my arm. Sensing my pulse race, I backed the clip up 3 times, memorizing every word, every cold pause between them. My first piece of evidence, as small as shaky, but it was my voice against theirs now, and for the first time since Chloe walked out, I didn't feel powerless. The next morning, I drove to the Hawthorne estate. Hunter stayed in the truck, his head poking out the window like he knew this wasn't a friendly visit. I didn't text first. I wanted to see their faces when they saw me. Lauren opened the door. Her smile froze the second she realized I wasn't holding flowers. Justin, she said, sugary sweet. Chloe isn't here. I know, I said. I kept my voice steady. I need to speak with Edward. He appeared a moment later, crisp polo, coffee mug in hand like he had all the time in the world. Son, he said. That word son landed like a slap. You shouldn't be here. I know about the account, I said. And I know you've been talking about me behind my back. For a second, his eyes flicked toward Lauren. Then he chuckled. Young man, we're family people. We protect our own. Chloe needs security. You run a garage. My jaw tightened. To return my money, Edward. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Careful. You don't want to make this messy. People listen to me in this town. You start throwing around accusations. He leaned in, and suddenly you'll find no one believes a word you say. I left without another word. Hunter's low growl rumbling as I climbed into the truck. Driving away, my hands were trembling not with fear, but with the clarity of war. He wasn't bluffing, this wasn't just about Chloe anymore. Edward wanted me erased, and for the first time, I realized he had the power to do it unless I found a way to fight back. I didn't go to the shop that day, couldn't focus on oil changes and tire rotations with Edward's voice in my head. Instead, I spread every piece of paper I had across my kitchen table: bank statements, invoices, and the prenup. Chloe's parents insisted we sign the prenup. I'd skimmed it before, more focused on Chloe's smile than the fine print. Now, reading slowly, I noticed a clause that made my stomach twist: in the event of separation prior to marriage, any joint funds revert to the Hawthorne Trust. My own lawyer had said it was standard, but I'd never imagined they'd trigger it before we even got married. I needed proof this wasn't just a cold legal maneuver, it was premeditated sabotage. That night, I parked a block away from the Hawthorne's house. Lights off, Hunter huffed in the back seat. Restless, I felt like a criminal. But if Edward was going to erase me, I had to get ahead of him. Around 11, the house lights went dark, except for the soft glow of Edward's home office. I knew that room. He'd shown me his wall of family pride awards, business contracts, and the little biometric keypad on his file cabinet. I waited another hour, then crept across the lawn. Every sound felt too loud: the crunch of grass, Hunter's faint whine through the cracked window of my truck. Through the side window, I saw Edward's computer monitor still on, emails, dozens of them, and one subject line made my chest tighten: Ray confidential, asset separation, reputation management. I snapped a photo through the glass, my heart hammering. It wasn't hard evidence yet, but it was a thread, and I had a feeling if I kept pulling, the whole sweater would come undone. The next night, I made my move. Waiting in the truck outside the Hawthorne's estate, I felt my stomach tighten with every passing car. Hunter sat in the backseat, ears flicking like he knew I was about to do something stupid. I had gloves, a small flashlight, and the old key fob Chloe gave me months ago, the one that's still unlocked the side gate. The lawn was wet with dew, soaking through my jeans as I crouched near the office window. I waited until the security light blinked off, then slipped inside through the side door I knew Lauren sometimes forgot to lock. The house smelled like polished wood and money. Edward's office was exactly as I remembered, family portraits staring down at me, a biometric keypad on the file cabinet glowing faintly in the dark. I hesitated, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't know the code, but I'd spent enough late nights fixing keyless entry cars to know a trick or two. I pulled a thin strip of aluminum from my pocket, a piece of soda can I'd cut into a shim. The lock clicked open after what felt like an eternity. I exhaled a shaky breath and slid the top drawer open. A bank files, emails printed out, and a folder labeled JD, my initials. Inside were screenshots of my bank accounts, shop revenue reports, and a printout of my prenup clause with sections highlighted in yellow. At the bottom, a handwritten note in Edward's bold, perfect script: leverage in case he resists, maintain Chloe's loyalty at all costs. I froze, bile rising in my throat. They weren't just pushing me out, they'd been planning it like a corporate acquisition. I snapped photos of everything, careful to leave no trace, but as I slid the folder back, I heard the creak of the floorboard in the hall. Someone else was awake. The floorboard creaked again. I killed the flashlight, my heart hammering in my throat. Hunter wasn't with me, but I could almost hear his low growl in my head. Footsteps moved closer. Then a voice whispered, sharp but quiet: Justin, what the hell are you doing here? I nearly jumped out of my skin. It wasn't Edward. It was Amelia Rhodes, Chloe's best friend. She was barefoot, holding a glass of water, her hair a messy halo around her face. For a moment, she just stared at me in the dark office. I started, but she held up a hand. Don't I saw him print those files tonight. I know he's trying to screw you over. Her voice shook, but she didn't look surprised. You're not the first guy he's done this to, she whispered. Chloe just never wants to believe it. A lump rose in my throat. You knew? She glanced toward the stairs. Not everything, but I've seen the way he talks about you when Chloe isn't around. Edward only respects power, and to him, you're just replaceable. I showed her my phone screen with the photos I'd taken. Her eyes widened. You need more than that, she said. He'll call this trespassing and flip it on you. But I can help. Her words were a lifeline. The first ally I'd had since Chloe left. She scribbled her number on a sticky note from Edward's desk. I'll call you tomorrow, but for God's sake, leave before he wakes up. I slipped out the side door, adrenaline making my hands shake as I drove away. For the first time, I felt a spark of hope, like maybe I wasn't alone in this. I didn't know it yet, but that spark wouldn't last long. Amelia called the next evening. I had been pacing my apartment for hours, Hunter following me like he was worried I'd wear a hole in the floor. I checked Edward's office after you left, she said, her voice low. He moved the folder, probably realized you were there. But I got something. She texted me a photo and email chain between Edward and some guy named Richard Coleman. Subject line: reputation management pre-wedding strategy. Reading it made my stomach clench. Richard was bragging about how easy it would be to clean up after a broken engagement, make Justin Davies look like a financial liability, and smooth the path for Chloe's next phase. I thanked her, but a cold feeling sank in. If Edward had outside help, I weren't just fighting one family, I was fighting a machine. 2 days later, Amelia stopped answering my calls, Then she blocked my number. Confused, I drove by her apartment. Her car was gone. A neighbor said she'd gone to spend some time with friends out of state. That night, I got a text from an unknown number: "Stop dragging Amelia into your mess. Last warning." No signature. But I didn't need one. I sat on the couch, phone in one hand, Hunter's fur in the other, my chest tight. I could feel the walls closing in every time I found a thread to pull. Edward cut it clean. I opened my laptop to recheck the bank accounts, but now I couldn't log in. Access denied. A single thought hit me like a punch: they're cutting me off everywhere. And now, I really am alone. The next morning, I drove to the shop to clear my head. Work had always been my anchor, the one place Edward Hawthorne couldn't touch, or so I thought. A white envelope was taped to the glass door. Notice of audit, County Revenue Department. I ripped it open, my stomach turning. A formal letter said my auto shop was under investigation for irregular tax filings and would be temporarily suspended pending review. I'd filed everything clean, but Edward didn't need to be right, he just needed to cast out. Inside the shop, everything felt hollow. The smell of oil and rubber that usually calmed me just made me sick. Hunter followed me in, nails clicking on the concrete. He whined, like he knew I was unraveling. I tried calling the revenue department. The woman on the line sounded sympathetic but firm. "Yes, Mr. Davies, we received an anonymous tip regarding your business accounts." Anonymous tip? I didn't need to guess twice. By lunch, 3 regular customers had called to cancel appointments. Someone had told them I was under investigation for fraud. My reputation was bleeding out, and I couldn't plug the hole. That night, I checked my email. A message waited in my inbox from Richard Coleman. No greeting, just a def attachment titled Settlement Proposal. I opened it. It offered me $10,000 if I signed a release agreeing I'd voluntarily relinquish all joint funds and dissolve any social claims to the Hawthorne family. They weren't just erasing me. They were paying me to disappear. I stared at the screen in the dark. Hunter curled against my leg. My phone buzzed with a news alert: local auto shop owner facing financial scrutiny, engagement to prominent family quietly called off. I didn't know who leaked it, but I knew this was the beginning of the end. The next 48 hours were a blur of humiliation. By noon the next day, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, not with support, but with pity. Old friends texting things like, "Hang in there, man," or "Sorry about the article." Nobody asked if it was true. They'd already decided it was. When I pulled into the shop, a red tag hung on the door: temporarily closed, investigation pending. The pit in my stomach turned to ice. I'd built this place from a single bay I rented behind a gas station. Years of sweat, busted knuckles, and sleeping in the office when times were lean, gone because a rich man decided I didn't belong in his world. I drove home, Hunter silent in the passenger seat. Even he seemed to understand. The joint wedding account was emptied. My personal checking had a hold on it: fraud investigation. I didn't even realize I'd started crying until the steering wheel blurred. I wasn't just losing Chloe, I was losing my life. That night, someone banged on my apartment door. I opened it to find an envelope slid under the frame. Inside was a single typed page: "Leave town quietly. Take the settlement. This doesn't have to get uglier." No signature, no mercy. I sat on the floor with Hunter's head on my knee, the apartment dark except for the glow of my laptop, my dash cam clip, the photos. Amelia's email screenshot. None of it would survive Edward's machine. Even my own voice felt useless. For the first time, I whispered into the silence, "Maybe they've already won." And I believed it. I didn't leave the couch the next morning. Hunter nudged my arm, whined, then laid his head on my chest like he knew I was breaking. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every choice that led me here. I thought about the first time I met Chloe's family. Lauren handed me a glass of wine without looking at me, like I was the help. Edward shook my hand once and immediately turned to ask Chloe about her career trajectory. I'd brushed it off, because Chloe smiled at me, and I thought that was enough. Now I had nothing. The shop closed, my accounts frozen, my name smeared across town and online. And the one person who had my back, Amelia, was gone, silenced like I never existed. That night, I sat in the garage with the lights off, laptop on my knees. I opened the dash cam folder again, not to find evidence. I'd already accepted it wouldn't be enough. I just needed to hear their voices. As Edward's words were played, "Make her see it before she ruins her life." Something clicked in my head. I froze the audio, then rewound 5 seconds. There was a faint beep. I leaned closer, heart pounding. That sound wasn't from my car. It was from their home security system, the biometric alarm that beeped whenever the front door opened. I remembered it because the first time I visited, Edward bragged about it. Logs everything: voice, code, and thumb-ripped voice biometric. The thing he trusted most to keep his world perfect was about to betray him. I sat up straight, a new energy crackling through me. They'd silenced me. They'd stolen everything. But maybe, just maybe, the Hawthorne's own walls were keeping the receipts. Hunter lifted his head, tail thumping once like he could feel it too. I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I drove past the Hawthorne estate like I had a dozen times. But this time I didn't just watch. I parked a block away and killed the engine. Hunter whined, sensing the tension. If Edward's fancy biometric system logged voice imprints like he bragged, that meant there were records independent, automatic, and impossible for him to tamper with without leaving a trace. Exactly the kind of level 2 evidence I needed. I waited until their house emptied for Sunday brunch. Lauren's Mercedes and Edward's black Range Rover rolled out one after the other. Only the gardener's truck was parked out front. I slipped through the side gate again, my gloves in place, hard hammering. This time, I didn't go to the office. I went straight for the security panel in the hall closet, the one Edward had shown off months ago. The small screen glowed blue, biometric access log, password required. I tried his birthday, no luck. Then I tried Chloe's, nothing. I stared at the panel, thinking of the way Edward adored control but worshipped appearances, and then it hit me: Lauren's initials plus their wedding year. The panel beeped, access granted. My pulse spiked as the log scrolled on the screen. Voice entry, Edward Hawthorne, 6/14/10/13 a p.m. Voice entry, Lauren Hawthorne, 6/14/10/16 a p.m. Voice note, make her see it before she ruins her life. I froze. They weren't just logging access, they were recording fragments of voice activation. My stomach flipped. If I could download this, it would be undeniable. I plugged in a small USB drive I always carried for shop diagnostics. The system recognized it and started copying files. Hunter barked once from the truck. I froze, glancing through the window. A car was pulling into the driveway, silver, not black or white. Vanessa's. Hunter's single bark still echoed in my ears as I yanked the USB from the panel. The progress bar had just hit 98. I prayed that was enough. Vanessa's car door slammed outside through the narrow hallway window. I saw her tossing her hair, sunglasses perched on her head, scrolling her phone like she owned the world. If she came inside, I was done. I ducked into the hall closet, heart pounding so loud I swore she could hear it. I crouched between coats, gripping the USB in my sweaty palm. The front door opened. Mom, she called. Her voice bounced off the high ceilings. No answer. Then her heels clicked toward the kitchen. I held my breath. Every second felt like a year. Hunter let out a low whine from the truck. Of whatever, Vanessa muttered. Then the door slammed again. Through the slats, I caught a glimpse of her walking back to her car, juggling a smoothie and her phone. I exhaled, legs trembling, and slipped out the side door. The sunlight felt like a spotlight on my guilt as I jogged to the truck. Hunter jumped excitedly, tail thumping, but I put a finger to my lips. We drove straight to Matt's garage. He was the only friend who hadn't texted me some pity emoji yet. When I handed him the USB, he raised an eyebrow. Please tell me this isn't illegal. Only if you believe in Edward Hawthorne's laws, I said. My voice cracked, half from adrenaline, half from exhaustion. He plugged it into his laptop. The files opened, short audio clips, each labeled with timestamps and the speaker's biometric ID. Then we hit the jackpot. Edward Hawthorne. 6/10/9/44 a p.m. Chloe's future doesn't include him. I'll cut him off at the knees if I have to. Matt's jaw dropped. Justin, this is it. This is how you burn him down. Matt leaned back in his chair, whistling low. You realize this isn't just a smoking gun, he said, tapping the laptop. This is a flamethrower. I nodded, gripping the edge of his desk. For the first time in weeks, the fog in my head started to clear. I copied every file onto 3 different drives and uploaded a copy to a cloud account under a new alias. No more mistakes. Edward could corrupt files, freeze accounts, ruin my shop, but he couldn't delete this. Matt leaned closer. So what's the play? You take it to the cops? A lawyer? I shook my head. Not yet. If I show my hand too soon, he is spin it. I need him to choke on his own reputation first. The plan formed slowly, piece by piece. The voice logs would go to 3 places: the bank handling the joint account he stole from, a local journalist who loved small-town scandals, the board of directors for his precious business, the Hawthorne Group. I wanted to time it perfectly. A chain reaction he couldn't contain. Matt's brow furrowed. You're talking about war. I met his eyes. It already is. He took my money, my name, my shop. He wanted me silent. Now he's going to hear me loud and clear. That night back at my apartment, I stared at the ceiling while Hunter snored at my feet. Fear twisted in my chest, but under it was something hotter: resolve. I recorded a short voice memo on my phone, the first thing I'd said to myself in weeks without shaking. My voice is mine, and I'm done being quiet. Hunter's ears flicked at the sound. For the first time since Chloe left, the apartment didn't feel so empty. The next morning, I sat in my truck outside the local bank, Hunter in the passenger seat watching me like he could smell the storm coming. I'd dressed in my one clean button-up, the same one I wore the day I opened my first business account. This time, I wasn't here as a dreamer. I was here to draw blood. I walked into the bank with my folder and USB drive. The branch manager, Mr. Klein, knew Edward Hawthorne. He greeted me with that polite, strained smile of someone already half doubting my story. I need to file a fraud claim on the joint wedding account, I said, steady as I could. He started to explain procedure, but I slid the USB across his desk. Before you say no, listen to this. He plugged it into his office computer. The audio clip filled the room. Edward Hawthorne. Chloe's future doesn't include him. I'll cut him off at the knees if I have to. Then another: move the funds before he notices. He won't fight back. Mr. Klein's expression shifted. By the third clip, he looked pale. This is highly irregular, he murmured, but I could see the doubt cracking. Leave this with me. If this is authentic, It'll trigger a formal fraud investigation. I left the bank and parked 2 streets over, heart pounding. That was strike one. Strike two was a carefully crafted email to Lydia Cross, the local reporter who lived for tearing down the untouchable. I attached the audio files and labeled them Hawthorne family voice logs and financial misconduct. When I hit send, my hands stopped shaking for the first time in weeks. I leaned back, exhaling. Hunter licked my hand like he knew. Yeah, boy, I whispered. They are about to hear me. By the next morning, the first domino had fallen. Lydia Cross didn't just sit on my email, she ran with it. When I woke up, my phone buzzed with notifications. Local news alert: Hawthorne family faces fraud allegations, leaked voice recordings suggest financial manipulation. I opened the article, my chest tight. It wasn't just a blurb, it was a full spread. Direct quotes from the voice logs, a screenshot of Edward's handwriting I'd photographed. And the kicker: anonymous sources suggest evidence has been submitted to local banks and regulatory agencies for review. By noon, the Hawthorne estate was swarmed with reporters. I drove past slowly, windows up. Vanessa stood on the porch, yelling at a cameraman, while Lauren hid behind the door. Edward wasn't in sight. I didn't feel joy. Not yet, just a strange electric calm, like standing outside before a thunderstorm breaks. My email pinged with a reply from the bank: subject fraud investigation open. Mr. Davies, the evidence provided warrants a full review. The joint account is frozen pending investigation. Thank you for your cooperation. Strike three was almost ready. I prepared a package for the Hawthorne Group Board of Directors, complete with audio logs, screenshots, and a cover letter that simply said, "Your CEO uses company resources to destroy people he doesn't like. Decide if this represents your values." By evening, Lydia posted an update: Hawthorne family declines comment, source claims internal business review underway. The silence from their side was louder than any denial. I sat on my couch, Hunter his head in my lap, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't the invisible anymore. It didn't take long for the Hawthorns to strike back. By the next morning, a thick white envelope waited outside my apartment door, inside a cease and desist letter from their lawyer, accusing me of defamation, cyber intrusion, and harassment. I laughed an ugly crack sound. They were bleeding, and this was a last-ditch tourniquet. 10 minutes later, my phone rang, a no number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut said pick up. Justin. Edward's voice rumbled, low and tight. You think you've won something? You've only made things worse for yourself. I let the silence hang a beat. I haven't even started. For the first time, he didn't sound unshakable. You release one more thing, he hissed, and I'll make sure you're unhearable in this town. You'll lose everything. I almost laughed again. I already did. And you taught me something: silence only helps the liar. He hung up. An hour later, my apartment buzzer went off. Through the peephole, I saw Chloe. She looked smaller than I remembered, eyes puffy, hands twisting the strap of her purse. I opened the door halfway. Justin, I didn't know, she said softly. Dad said you were unstable. He said you stole from us. I stared at her, my throat tight. Did you believe him? She flinched. I wanted to, but then the news. Her voice cracked. They're saying everything's true, Justin. People at the country club are whispering, Mom won't leave the house. For a flicker, I saw the girl I'd fallen in love with. Then I remembered the empty closet, the stolen money, the silence. This is the life they chose, I said, and I'm just holding up the mirror. Hunter barked once behind me, as if punctuating the moment. Chloe's eyes welled up. That she didn't step inside. That night, I finished the part of the plan I'd been holding back. The board package for Hawthorne Group went out: audio files, scanned notes, and a short video of me explaining, in my calmest voice, how Edward used company resources to ruin my life. By morning, the fallout hit. I woke to 3 missed calls from Matt, and a string of texts: Matt bro, turn on the news now, he's done. I grabbed the remote. The local anchor's voice was sharp, almost gleeful. Breaking news: Edward Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Group, is under internal review after leaked biometric voice logs suggest misuse of company systems and fraudulent asset manipulation. Multiple board members have reportedly called for his resignation. Then came the kicker: sources confirm the district attorney is reviewing the evidence for possible charges of financial misconduct. I sat there in my dim living room, Hunter's tail thumping against the couch. It was surreal. For weeks, I'd been the ghost they tried to erase. Now Edward was the one cornered, his perfect life cracking on live TV. My phone buzzed again. A no number. I answered. Justin. Edward's voice was hoarse, broken in a way I'd never heard. We can work this out. Just take it all down. I let the silence hang for a long beat. Then I said, no, you taught me the value of silence, Edward, and it's your turn to live with it. I hung up, my hands trembling, not from fear but release. For the first time since Chloe left, I felt light, not happy yet, but free. By the end of that week, the Hawthorns weren't untouchable anymore. Their gates, once just a shiny symbol of wealth, were now lined with cameras and reporters shouting questions. Drone shots of their estate were all over the local news. Lauren tried to make a public statement in her perfect pearl necklace, but the clips went viral for all the wrong reasons. Her voice trembled, her eyes darted like a trapped bird, and the captions wrote themselves: from country club queen to collapsing empire. Vanessa posted a long angry rant on social media, claiming they were being harassed by jealous nobodies. The comments shredded her. Even people who used to kiss their feet were piling on. I didn't celebrate out loud. I just sat on my couch, Hunter's head on my lap, and let the quiet sink in. I'd wanted justice. I'd wanted my voice to be heard. Now, the whole town was listening. The bank confirmed the joint account funds were being returned to me pending investigation. The county audit of my shop came back clean. I could reopen next week. Chloe texted me once, "I'm sorry, I didn't see it before. I hope you find peace." I stared at it for a long time, then turned my phone face down. Peace wasn't about her anymore. Peace was the sound of my own life coming back. That night, I walked Hunter past the Hawthorne estate one last time. Lights flickered inside, but the house felt hollow. No laughter, no perfect dinner clinks, just walls holding echoes of the lies they'd built. Hunter barked softly, tail wagging. I whispered, "They can keep the house. I've got my voice back." 2 weeks later, I got the letter I'd been waiting for. A crisp envelope from the district attorney's office sat in my mailbox. Official seal and all. Hunter sat at my feet while I tore it open with shaking hands. "Mr. Davies, the evidence you submitted has been reviewed and authenticated. A formal investigation into Edward Hawthorne and Associates has been opened for financial misconduct and asset misappropriation. You are listed as the primary complainant and witness. Please retain all further communications for legal proceedings." I sat back against the kitchen counter, exhaling a shaky laugh. Hunter barked once, like he knew this was the last chain snapping loose. By the next morning, Lydia Cross had a new headline splashed across the local site: Hawthorne family under criminal investigation, wedding funds frozen, business board considers CEO removal. I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The system they thought they owned was now grinding them up slowly, publicly. Matt came by the shop that afternoon as I was setting the open sign back in the window. He held up a six-pack and grinned. "Figured you'd want to celebrate the rebirth of Davies Auto." We sat on the curb, Hunter between us, watching the sun dip over the street. Matt nudged me. "You're officially the loudest quiet guy now. You didn't throw a single punch, but man, you knocked them out." I smiled, tired but lighter than I'd felt in months. They wanted me to disappear. Instead, I just made sure everyone could see them. The breeze carried the faint echo of traffic and a dog barking in the distance. For the first time, the silence around me didn't feel like defeat. It felt like mine. The Hawthorns didn't show up in person for the first hearing. Their lawyer tried to push for a settlement behind closed doors, but I didn't bite. I didn't need their money anymore. I needed the truth to stay in the light. Chloe showed up once, though. I was locking up the shop one evening when I saw her car in the lot. She stepped out slowly, wearing the same perfume that used to cling to my hoodies. I just wanted to say she started, then stopped, biting her lip. "You were right about everything, and I let them decide who I was." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Hunter patted over and sniffed her hand but stayed close to me. "I'm not angry anymore," I said quietly. "I just don't want to be part of that world again." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. "I get it. I hope you find someone who doesn't need convincing." I watched her drive away for the last time. The parking lot felt bigger, emptier, but not lonely. That night, I dug the old dash cam out from my drawer, the one that had caught Edward's voice, the first thread that unraveled everything. I held it in my palm for a long moment, then walked out to the dumpster and let it go. I didn't need to replay their voices anymore. The silence in my apartment now belonged to me, not them. Hunter hopped onto the couch, curling up like he'd been waiting for this moment too. I scratched behind his ears and whispered, "Guess it's just us now, and that's enough." Spring came early that year. The first morning I opened the shop with the new sign: Davies Auto, family owned, fearless. Sunlight spilled across the floor like it had been waiting for me. Hunter sprawled in the bay doorway, tail sweeping the concrete as customers trickled in. Business came back faster than I expected. Neighbors waved when they drove by. One old customer shook my hand and said, "About time someone stood up to those people." I didn't tell him how close I'd come to disappearing, how I'd sat in the dark believing they'd won. I just smiled and got back to work, my hands finally steady again. At lunch, I sat on the curb with a sandwich and watched Hunter chase dust motes in the sunlight. For the first time in months, the quiet around me wasn't heavy. It wasn't the kind of silence they tried to shove me into, isolated, powerless. The silence was mine. It was the sound of freedom, of a life I'd rebuilt with my own two hands. I checked my phone. No new messages from Chloe, no threats from Edward, just a notification from the bank confirming the final return of my funds. I opened my voice memo app and played the one line I'd recorded weeks ago during the storm: "My voice is mine, and I'm done being quiet." I let it play once, then deleted it. I didn't need reminders anymore. Hunter trotted over and nudged my shoulder, tail wagging like he knew something had changed for good. I scratched his head and whispered, "Yeah boy, we made it. And they can live with their silence now." I stood, locked up the shop, and walked into the bright, ordinary day, finally free, finally loud in the best way possible, by living my own life. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.